All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Provider Support Subcommittee meeting. We have a pretty brief meeting today, but we're going to be talking about two pretty meaty topics. So looking forward to diving into that with you guys today. My name is Erin Kerrigan. I am the Acting Assistant Director of Community Engagement here at DCYF. And I'm going to get the meeting kicked off and lead you guys through the first piece, and then I will pass it over to the executive committee. So I want to just take a moment to review the virtual meeting protocols. I'm sure everyone here is very familiar with these by now, but just to call out to mind the mute button. This is a relatively small-ish group, so at least for the first piece, it's going to be a little informal. So feel free to unmute if there's a break in the conversation or if you want to share something. Otherwise, please be sure to keep yourself on mute and feel free to use the chat box. We do monitor that throughout the day, and you're always welcome to share any feedback or questions there as well. So we're going to start off with some introductions. So in the chat, please share your name, where you're located, and your role. And then we're going to have an icebreaker after that. So I'll just give everyone a minute to do that.
There's so few of us here. I mean, we could do introductions if people just unmute.
Yeah, and you want to just go round robin and do it that way. I know we have an icebreaker question. We can throw that in the mix and just have everybody do the icebreaker verbally. You can also do it on the Menti as well, but this is our icebreaker for the day. Other than the internet, what invention during your lifetime has been the most impactful? So Julie, do you want to start?
Sure, I'm Julie. I run Creative Kids Learning Center in Port Orchard. I think other than the internet, because there's so many apps and things that maybe things like my backup camera on my car. Didn't think I'd ever use it. Now I do rely on it.
Yeah, I drove a rental car with a backup camera. And after a week now, I'm like, well, I need a new car. It's really nice.
Yeah.
All right, going on the list. Susie is next on my screen.
Hi, Susie Hansen from the Washington Federation of Independent Schools. And I would say maybe that machine that's like a massage vibrating thing, like it's like a little, I hate to use the word gun, but it's like a little gun that you use to after exercise if you need a little massage. I love that thing.
Those really like intense ones with the,
mm-hmm. Yeah, like the really hardy ones.
Yeah, those are the best. All right, Angela. Oh, you're muted.
It's not quite in my lifetime, but it's very close to my lifetime. The invention that I appreciate the most was the heart transplant. My husband just celebrated 12 years with a new heart, and the first one happened just a few years before I was born. So I'm going to include that in my favorite things.
And quite the invention that is.
I know that makes mine look super lame.
No, all the other ones are super cool as well, but I'm a little bit in my feelings today. So
yeah, I mean, it's an amazing thing, and that's crazy to think that it was not that long ago that we did not have access to such a thing.
It was not very long ago. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Susan, you're next on my screen.
Okay, well, I just have to say my father-in-law was born in 1920 and died at 101. So when I think about all the inventions that covered his lifetime, it's like a bit mind-blowing. But I would say for me, I think the smartphone has been a real lifesaver in my world, and I appreciate whoever invented that. Thank you.
All right. Tanya, you're next on my screen, and I love your background.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
My name is Tanya Overton, and I'm the interim director at the Tacoma Community College Early Learning Center. And I don't know if this was invented during my lifetime or not, but I'm going to say Post-it notes because I'm using one right now. So they're wonderful.
Thanks, Tanya. And Rosa has one in the chat. GPS system. Yes. Yes. I can't even remember that I drove for years and years before I even knew what a GPS system was. What was I doing? All right. Next, I have Dawn.
Hi, sorry. So for me, I think digital cameras, I think where we've come from with camera technology in my lifetime since the 80s is crazy to me, that you have like in your pocket a camera that can take a perfect picture of the moon. It's really crazy for me.
Thanks so much, Dawn. Next on my screen, I have Jen.
I was also going to say the GPS. So I have an old map in my car, an old atlas that I still have the kids like use to figure out how to use it, but we use the maps everywhere. GPS maps are everywhere.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, I'm the same way. All right, and we have one in the chat. We have a couple in the chat. So from Christina, DoorDash and Uber Eats. And also that's a good reminder, if you can't unmute and you would prefer to just throw your answer in the chat, that's totally fine. And then we have another one, asthma treatments, especially inhalers. That's another thing. It's really crazy to think about. It wasn't that long ago when most people didn't have access to those things. All right, next I have Vicki.
Hi there. Vicki, Spokane Valley. I was going to say smartphone also, but not in a positive way, honestly. I really think it's led to a lack of connection, and we are seeing a lot of the impact of smartphones and parents being addicted to smartphones in our children. So yeah, I'm addicted to mine too, but I think the technology has outpaced our human brains.
Yeah, good call, Vicki. Yeah, the question isn't what's the best, it's what's the most impactful. So it's hard to beat the impact of the smartphone for sure, in both directions. All right, Rebecca.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rebecca. I am the Early Achievers Regional Coordinator out of Central. And I threw mine in the chat also that GPS navigation has been a lifesaver when you're traveling around the planet. And that sort of way to not have to stop off the side and get a paper map out is a fantastic thing. I love it.
All right, thanks, Rebecca. Next on my list is Katie.
Good morning. I'm Katie Hudkins, owner of Treetop Village in Bremerton and also co-chair of the subcommittee today. I would say the most impactful invention is the Keurig. I have one in my office, one goes camping with me, one in my house. Coffee is my lifeline, so I couldn't do without it, honestly.
Thanks, Katie. I can't live without coffee either. All right, next I have Deborah. Oh, maybe Deborah can't unmute. That's fine. Go ahead and you can put your intro in the chat or unmute when you're able. We can just move on to the next one. And then Katie, I think you're off mute. I think you're unmuted. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Thanks. All right, next I have Nicholas.
Hi, Nicholas Colgan from the DCYF Oversight Board. I'm going to say, as a child in the 90s, the Game Boy.
Oh my gosh.
Started
Yes.
my love to today of Nintendo.
The Game Boy was earth-shattering. Such a big deal. Oh man, yeah, that's a good one. I loved mine. All right. Next I have Kara.
Did you say Carol?
I said Kara, Kerra, but Carol, you can go ahead. We can do Kara next if you're ready to go.
Oh, hi, my name is Carol and I'm located in Lakewood, early childhood educator, family child care home business. And for me, there have been so many, but I will say that the cell phone, because growing up as a child, we had to pay phones and we would have to be home before the sun went down and so forth. But now it's very, it's a positive thing because you can text family members, kids can call you and tell you where they're located and so forth. You can track on it. So that's been a positive thing for me. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Kira Bauer. I am the owner of Little Scholars Development Center and the founder of the nonprofit Raise Development, Inc. I think the best invention thus far that hasn't been mentioned for me yet is remote start, especially in these cold winter months. I use it quite often, so that's mine.
That sounds like such a luxury. That's another thing I need. I need a backup camera and the remote start. Add that to the list. And okay, Christina and Rochelle both shared theirs in the chat. Dee, you're next on my screen. All right, if Dee's not ready to go, we can move on. I think now we're on to staff. So Eliza.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Eliza Yair. I'm with DCYF. I'm the Child Care Licensing QA/CQI Manager. And a lot of what everyone has said, I agree with, very impactful. And the one I want to add is the iPod. Not having to deal with CDs in order to listen to music while walking around was important to me.
Thanks, Eliza. Travis?
Good morning, everybody. Travis Hansen with DCYF. I'm kind of similar to Eliza that the iPod was a big deal when I got that little brick that held all my music. But I think the other thing that it will be impactful is the AI stuff that's coming out right now. That is just crazy, kind of, some of what they're doing right now. So I think that will be huge.
Yeah, hopefully huge in a good way.
Yes.
And not
yes.
a sci-fi movie way.
Not in the Terminator way.
Though, yes, yeah.
Not in the Terminator way.
But it will be impactful. We know that much.
Yes.
All right, Eric.
Oh, there we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Eric LaFontaine. I am located on Coast Salish lands in Lakewood, Washington. I am on the community engagement team. And I would have to say the biggest impact on my life would be Bluetooth. I feel like everything I use is wirelessly connected with something.
Yeah, Bluetooth hadn't gotten a shout out yet. Surprising. All right. Got to represent for Bluetooth. All right, Jessica.
Morning, everyone. Jessica Spencer, also on the community engagement team located in Richland. And besides what everyone else has already said, I don't know if someone already mentioned, just video conferencing has pretty much been a game changer in my life the last year with work and communicating with family.
Thanks, Jessica. All right. Are we missing anybody? I'm going through the list. Is anybody not gone? All right. Well, I will go last. So as I said, I introduced myself earlier, but my name is Erin and I'm the acting assistant director of community education. And it's so hard to choose, but I think the invention that's on my mind this morning is what was announced yesterday by the Department of Energy. There was a massive breakthrough in nuclear fusion energy that is going to be a game changer. I don't understand nuclear fusion, but the articles seem to be really hopeful, and I am really stoked about that. So fingers crossed it'll have as big of an impact as it has the potential to have for clean energy, and renewable energy. So that's first on my list, at least for today. All right. So now we're going to move on to reviewing the minutes and feedback loop. Let's see. I think Jessica is, Jessica, do we have links for those or, oh yeah, we do. Okay. So it was included in the prep email, but if you need a moment, the minutes are linked in the chat. If you wouldn't mind taking a moment to review. And does anybody have any questions or call outs for the minutes at this time? Also, just wanted to remind you that if you need more time to review, you are free to reach out with any questions or corrections if you have them. If we're good on that, then Jessica has also included links to the feedback loop in the chat, as well as one of the supplemental documents for the feedback loop, which is the final recommendation report from the temporary licensing subcommittee. And I wanted to give everybody a few minutes to read through the feedback loop. And then also, once you have a couple minutes to do that, there's one thing that that should be in there that I forgot to add. So I'm going to bring that up in a moment, and then we'll make sure it's included in the minutes.
Can you put the feedback up on the screen?
The feedback loop?
Yeah.
Yeah, here. I'll just share my screen, Jessica, if that works. Okay. Oh, wait, maybe not. Actually, Jessica, are you able to pull it up? Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
My windows are being weird.
I think folks should read. There was a letter that Deanna wrote to ELAC about her departure. There was a letter from, well, there was a letter from Allison about Allison about Deanna leaving, and then I think people should read the part from, I'm kind of curious about the part from Ross when he, there was follow-up from Ross regarding our feedback at the meeting he was present for. When did this feedback come in? Is this a recent addition? Because I know there was some initial feedback.
You mean this the response letter?
The part above that where it says what Ross's comments.
When did Ross submit these comments?
It's above that as well.
So I got Ross's responses probably like within 2 or 3 weeks of the last provider supports meeting. And then also I sent everything for review last week just to make sure we were good to go. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Okay,
but,
so the Ross comments, which are on page 1,
right,
were not, or no, there it is. That's not in addition to his original comments. This is original comments.
This is his response. This is the follow-up from the from the meeting. So anything that was said or shared during the meeting itself would be in the October minutes, and then this is just the follow-up that answered to the kind of outstanding items that remained at the end of the conversation.
Okay, I was glad there was a lot of feedback and that he responded.
And yeah, and I do want to give people some time to review everything. There's also some follow-up items from Jess Mayer on the trauma-informed care conversation. There's and the thing that I should have included in this, and it slipped my mind, is during last week's ELAC meeting, they voted to send another letter to DCYF leadership regarding the retention grants. So, and I have a copy of the letter. We do not yet have an agency response, but that is scheduled to be going out by end of day today, actually. That's the latest timeline I have. So we'll be sure to include their response in the follow-up email for this meeting, since it should be available by the end of the day today. But I can show you the letter that ELAC decided to send with, and I'm just going to share my screen here, with the added context that this letter had to go through a couple different iterations. Oh, wait, are you looking at the right thing? Am I showing the right thing? Does it say dear
Yes.
Secretary Rose? Okay.
Yeah.
So so this letter went, the original draft of the letter that was proposed to ELAC was actually voted down by membership. They wanted to pull it back and make some changes. They did that. And then a couple days later, after they initially planned on sending this, is when this went out. And then Nicole's shop has received it. And like I said, an official agency response is expected to be shared by end of day today. So I'll just give everybody a moment to review that. And I'll scroll down in a couple minutes.
I know that one of the responses from DCYF has been that merit would be used, or that it was discussed at provider supports in August that merit would be used for the retention grant. I went back to review the August minutes from the website, and there was some discussion about using some parts of merit. We talked about, like, the feedback we gave was there's no category for substitutes and they should add that category. They thought that was a good idea, but that didn't end up happening. There was discussion about there was discussion at the provider supports meeting in August that providers felt like they should have discretion over how the funds were distributed among their staff. And some providers felt that that was too specific and it should just be based on the grant that was doled out in Seattle, because the retention grant was, my understanding, it was kind of modeled after that. So they didn't actually tell us during the August provider supports meeting that there was going to be anything that would deem any of the staff ineligible. There was no, had they discussed at the August meeting the inclusion of checking a box all the way at the right, we would have discussed it and there would have been better understanding, and I think we would have had better communication around the grant, but that wasn't discussed. So I'm just sharing that because it is frustrating to hear the response in some emails that this was discussed, the inclusion of using merit was discussed at the August provider supports meeting. It wasn't discussed at length, or it didn't answer, the questions that are coming up now were not discussed at the August meeting.
All right, I made a note with that, Julie. And I'll make sure that's included in the follow-up. And I also want to call out, we will be taking time after this to review the agency response. So I want to give members a chance to review those before we transition to that part of the discussion. But that is coming next. So, and I've made a note of that. I think that's a good call out, Julie. Make sure that we pull that information from the August meeting minutes. And I want to just give, there's a little bit more to this letter. Just want to give everybody a chance to review that. And if any questions, like I said, we will transition to talking about the agency response that we have received as of today. And unfortunately, the timing's just slightly off to be able to review the response to this letter, but we will be sharing that. But I just wanted to provide some space if anybody had any questions or comments regarding the ELAC letter, anything on the ELAC side of that. Otherwise, we can move on and then start digging into the updates.
I just wanted to point out that, you know, the WAC that keeps getting referenced, it isn't very explicit in the WAC about what verify means and confirm. It says merit, but it doesn't say. So I think that to lean so heavily on that WAC as a way to what feels like punish providers who didn't know what to do in the merit system. The other part of it is, and I'll speak personally for my organization, Kids Co, we have people who were eligible but denied awards because we don't have a licensor assigned and there's new directors in those centers. So the licensor didn't confirm or verify the directors, which meant the directors could then not verify, or, you know, so there are some problems within the system that are unfairly punishing people because of failures on the part of DCYF staff. So I think, you know, so these are all, and we've emailed this information to DCYF and everybody, like everybody says, getting the pat answer back. But
Well, that's where, sorry, I'm sorry. I just want to jump in really quickly.
Okay.
There is inequitable information currently in this room. So I don't want to launch into discussing what information you may have received from the agency before.
So we're going to
everybody on
do
the
that
call-
we're going to do
Right.
that at 10, correct?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah. I just
sorry,
want to make sure
sorry.
everybody on the call has a chance to review the material before we dive in. So that's all really good feedback. And that's exactly the kind of feedback that we'll be gathering to pass on to the agency, but I want to make sure we're not going off.
Obviously, I got hooked a little bit.
Yeah, it's easy to do. It's a rabbit hole. So, you know, yeah, and I know, I just want to make sure that everybody is operating from the same
Okay,
understanding.
sorry. Okay, bye.
So, and then regarding the letter, I mean, I'm assuming there isn't anything pressing about, here's the last bit. If you'll see they included a screenshot there. And so if there's nothing pressing, if there's nothing anybody wants to share about the letter, then we can move on. I just wanted to make sure you guys had a chance to review that since it just happened last week. It slipped my mind to include that in this feedback loop document, but I will
Thanks
be
for sharing that. I appreciate being able to read that. They did a good job.
All right. So the next thing on the list was going to be the work plan, but it sounds like you guys are ready to transition into the retention grant conversation. Is that correct? We can circle back to the work plan topic conversation later in the meeting.
Sandy asked about if that letter is available.
Yeah, so it will be included in we'll be sending it with the follow-up email, and then also we will be linking it in the minutes. I'm not sure if it's included in the ELAC minutes since they finalized it after the meeting, but it will be in the meeting materials for this meeting and published.
So Sandy, if you're on the email list, great. If not, you might want to drop your email in the chat.
I am. Thank you so much. It's just need that accommodation for my own vision impairment. It's hard for me to read on screen. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for calling that out, Sandy. And sorry, apologies that wasn't available in a more accessible format. That was my bad.
No, that's okay. Thank you so much for sending that forward. No, it's all good. Thank you.
Yeah. So I got some support for, and it's up to you guys. Do you guys want to just transition directly into discussing the retention grants, and we can come back to the work plan conversation?
Honestly, I think we should stick with the work plan. Otherwise, the retention grant will eat up all the time.
Okay. Well, and this is a fairly quick conversation, so it's not the more typical like full-on annual work plan mapping, and we did discuss this briefly at the last meeting, but just wanted to recalibrate that we are transitioning from an annual, like a calendar year work plan to the fiscal year schedule starting next year. So that leaves just a gap of the first 2 meetings in 2023 that are going to be kind of just lost in the middle there without a work plan. So we will be having the annual work plan conversation later in the year. But for the next 2 meetings, so February and April, we just wanted to get some general feedback from you guys about any priority topics that you want the executive committee and the CE team to like review for potentially being added to the agendas for those next 2 meetings. So we'll just give you guys a couple minutes to share your thoughts. And also I wanted to add a little call out that there is never a bad time to share this feedback with us. We're always like, even if it's just a random thought you have, if you send CE or myself a quick email, we will add it to the topic list for consideration. But any thoughts you guys have for now that you would like to prioritize for February?
Well,
and
it's
April?
hard without context. I would say whoever wrote update on DCYF reorg, if they could put more in the Menti, because there's no way to know if members of the committee here would be interested in that without knowing what they're talking about.
I'm wondering if this person's not comfortable to share it, you can keep it anonymous, so that's fine. But I'm wondering if this person is referring to specifically the reorg that's happening in the early learning division, or if this is regarding a broader agency-wide plan.
Yeah, this is Sandy. And I feel totally comfortable saying this. Yes, the reorg of the early learning and as it relates to implementation, like to providers, to people supporting providers, what does this mean? And so I know it's fairly new right now, and you're all going through that change process. I totally get that. And I also know that there is such a huge need for more communication, frequent communication with providers and folks that support providers, whether it's licensors or coaches or trainers. So I'm looking at that from the perspective of what do these changes mean and what are the implications for the way they engage. In addition to that, on a broader scale, I've been at a few meetings, where DCYF has stated their commitment to ResJ. And I know there's been full turnover in the Office of ResJ. And these are inequities we are talking about and that the providers are raising today. So it would be helpful to get an update on what are those adult practices look like in the department. So I'm talking about accountability around what does it mean when the statement is made that we have a ResJ commitment and that we're striving to be a trauma-informed organization or state department. What does that look like? How can we walk alongside of you and hold ourselves accountable to that as well? ResJ is racial equity and social justice commitment that is on the DCYF website. And some of us were able to engage in feedback around what that commitment would look like. So I'm just trying to put some, what does that practice look like? I guess I think it would be helpful for all of us as I continue to hear providers want to engage in meaningful ways at meaningful times. I think that's the big theme I'm walking away with this year, being part of these conversations, but I don't want to speak for our providers. You guys have a beautiful voice and feel free to fact check me on that. That's what I meant about the DCYF reorg.
Sandy, have you also raised this issue at ELAC?
I don't participate at ELAC, Julie. I believe there's designations, but I can connect. I believe it's Ryan who is there, and perhaps Deanne, but I will check on that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandy, for clarifying that. So I'm hearing kind of almost like I mean, a million conversations can be had under those two umbrellas, but the two that I'm hearing is one, to get an update and information from the early learning shop about their reorg, their capacity build out, and specifically how that's going to impact communications, the work that you guys are doing, what is the expected outcome of this reorg. And I know that even as of today, there is stuff that to share, relevant stuff to share. So I'm sure by the next meeting, there will be even more. So that's a good thing to have on the radar. And then with the ResJ team, I'll connect with Frank.
Do they have a ResJ team anymore? I thought
we do. Latoya is still here. She is going to be, she's going to be leaving the agency like soon, like in the next week or two. But she has hired, I think it's like 6 people, something. I don't know how she does it, but we have starting next week, we're going to have at least 3 administrators in the positions that were formerly held by Yvette Jasper, Day Shogun, and Latoya. And then
will there be anybody there with historical knowledge?
I don't know the names of everybody yet. I know that that's something that's going to be, I'm expecting an announcement of that actually this week. I've gotten one name. I know that he has a lot of.
So it's a complete staff turnover.
Yes, it's a complete staff turnover.
Yeah, that's concerning.
With also on top of that, going from a team of 3 people to a team of 10. So it's not just a turnover, but it's like a tripling of the team with brand new positions. So I'm, for that reason, I'm sure, it would be really good to have the new leadership in those that's going to be taking those positions, having them come speak and introduce themselves. And but also I'll connect with Frank. I'll connect with Frank to get his take on like if they're, like what's the vision, what's the plan, how does this tie into the equity mission of the agency, all of that. So that's all, those are all really good questions, Sandy. And I'll reach out about both of those today.
Yeah, I also wanted to, I did put in investigations. This committee has been trying for, I think, all of 2020 to have a meaningful conversation with people representing the CPS division within licensing and also licensing, to have a discussion about what providers can expect when they're faced with a licensing investigation, and what they can expect and how that differs from a CPS investigation. So I know that there was a lot of interest over many months from providers, and it's just kind of been backburnered because we haven't been able to get the appropriate staff from each division that can answer all of the questions in real time. It's often frustrating to hear, we don't have the answer to that. So.
Can I just add that, Julie, thank you for really calling that out. That is something that we've talked a lot about all year, and we've had some real issues with CPS when we call CPS to help us, and then it ends up being something that's negative for our programs. Like they're in trouble because they were asking for help. And so I think it would be really great. I'm just going to re-emphasize your emphasizing that is something we really need. The CPS and licensing conversations need to happen on a more regular basis.
Yeah, that's good to add, because if we're expected to self-report or even just call and ask questions, there shouldn't be negative consequences for that. Otherwise, why would people do it?
Thanks, guys. Yeah, that's something that is definitely on the topic list for the upcoming meetings. I don't know, not to put you on the spot, Travis, I don't know if you have like an update on that. I know that we'll be meeting about some of those things in the next, I saw an invite for that come through. I don't remember when it is, but I know that that's part of the conversation that we'll be having regarding the TLS follow-up. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we are, and first off, Julie and Susie, I agree with you, right? We want people to feel comfortable to be able to call in if there's something that has happened, right? So this is an area that we need to work on. Unfortunately, this is going to take some time to do it because just to be transparent, there's some fiscal things that are behind the scenes that are causing us to trip up on this. So we have to figure out how to blend some funds here, because what you have is you have state funding with the LDCPS, and then you have CCDF funds, and we need to figure out how to blend those funds so that we can move some resources around to be able to address some of the CPS stuff. Luba and I have talked about putting together even a decision package and it's kind of getting in the weeds, but we need some money to be able to do this, is the bottom line.
That's an odd, I mean, I believe you, but it's definitely an odd response.
Yes.
To be able to have somebody come and answer questions about what providers can
No. We can come and answer the questions. I'm talking about making changes to the process, right?
Okay.
Like you all, I mean, we can come and explain the process. We know it's not working, right? We know that this isn't functioning the way that it probably should. And it's been exposed during COVID, right? Because if you have a CPS case in your facility and it could close a classroom down, right? Where prior to COVID, at least you could get somebody else into the room to cover that, right? And so I think that what it's done is it's shined a light on this, that we need to be able to respond, one, to the investigation, whatever that risk is there. But then the other side of it is how does licensing respond and give technical assistance to the provider and assist them through that versus it being us against them, right? And so that we can have more of a partnership and assist you in that situation. So
yeah,
Julie, we can definitely come and Ron and I can come and talk and share it. Yes, but I think we need to make changes to it. So
agreed. I think, one of the things that we've heard over and over in these meetings when we have talked about it is like there's often a suggestion by a licensor or the CPS person that the staff person go on an administrative leave, but that suggestion comes across as required.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yes, they would have to close the classroom. So providers need clarity on what is required versus what is being suggested to them.
Yep, I agree.
Yep.
Dawn, I see you have a hand up. Do you have a question?
I just wanted to kind of go off what Julie was saying there about how like we're told that administrative leave can be suggested, but if don't take that suggestion, I have had DCYF, my licensors, come back the next day and say, nope, sorry, we're going to suspend them anyway. So it's like, that's something that really, and when I've asked for any kind of like, what is the protocol? What do you guys need? Like all of that, I can't get any actual answers. I've been told it's different for everybody.
Yes, therein lies the problem.
I'm not sure. It sounds like maybe Dawn might have frozen.
Yeah.
Oh, I froze up. There we go. Is that bad? Better? Okay.
Yeah, but we might have missed what you said.
Just it is really frustrating as a provider to do every new.
Oh, looks like her connection was lost.
Well, I think the point was made that different providers experience different things depending on who their licensor and what region they're in. And that's true for every topic, I think. But when it comes to investigations, it's a hard one. It's a hard pill to swallow to have it be told you have to put this person on administrative leave over something that's possibly self-reported or very minor or whatever it is. And then if you push back, you find out, oh no, that was a suggestion. So
we will definitely, I'll connect with Travis, and I will be connecting in the coming weeks, and we'll definitely figure out how that's going to look either for the February, April meeting. So we have added that to the list. And I also just wanted to give a quick call out to the fact that starting, really kind of starting in earnest in February, primarily in ELAC, but this will impact this subcommittee as well. We need to start putting the pieces together for the FSKA recommendation report that ELAC is responsible for. And provider supports is going to have deliverables associated with that. So we don't know exactly how that will look right now. Some of that's going to be dictated by ELAC as far as what they're going to take off their plate and put in the provider's plate. And then also your feedback will influence that process as well. But I just kind of wanted to put that out there, that a lot of these conversations that are going to be contributing to the recommendation report have already begun. You guys are already participating in a lot of these, but starting in February is when we're really going to have to start putting pen to paper, and we're just going to have some pretty concrete deliverables that will be reflected in the annual work plans. So just wanted to put that on the radar.
I guess that answers the one in the top far right corner then.
Okay, so yes and no. So this is a different report. So ELAC's responsible for their own report. And then the Fair Start for Kids Act Temporary Licensing Subcommittee, that is a different report that has been submitted. But similarly, it's all very much, you know, kind of woven together in a lot of ways. We, Public Affairs, CE, Public Affairs and Licensing Division is meeting in the next couple weeks to kind of build out the next steps for the TLS report. And so I'm guessing we will have something more solid to share with you guys by the next meeting, as far as where we're at with that and what the agency plan is with all of those pieces. So we will have an update to share, but I just wanted to differentiate that those are two different reports. So this one, it was specifically focused on licensing. And the FSKA report recommendation report will be just a wider scope on basically all the funding elements of FSKA. So. All right, if we're ready to move on, then unless anybody has anything else to share, and another shout out, there's never a bad time to share this feedback with us. I love getting this kind of feedback. It really helps inform the conversations we have with the executive committee, and it helps keep things on our radar. And it's something that anytime you share a topic idea or something you want to see on the agenda, that is compiled, written down, reviewed, and discussed. So there's never a bad time to send this in. All right, so I'm going to kick it over to Julie and Katie, and they're gonna walk you through the next piece of reviewing the updates of the retention grant and discussing next steps.
Okay, thanks, Erin. Yeah, we wanted to give time for hearing from everyone about their experience with the retention grant rollout. We also wanted to go over the Q&A. I don't know if everybody's had, you know, an opportunity to read the written responses that they provided to the questions that were submitted to them. I would say that there needs to be some time today to tweak the questions. If we're not satisfied that we got the answer that we were looking to, it might not have answered the question we meant. So we might have to change the question to be more specific. I don't know if somebody can share their screen with those answers and we could go over them real quick. But for me, the number one, the very first question, how many received the grant versus how many applied, I actually would like to have the answer, how many staff were deemed ineligible. And I know that Erin said she would resubmit that question, but there might be other things that you guys want resubmitted. And so if we could just take a few minutes to see if there's other questions to submit over. They opted to communicate with the committee via written communication this time. So that's where we're at.
I think a lot of the questions that are on this, Julie, do give us answers. Like you said, the number one question between how many received the grant versus how many applied. For a fact, we know that more than 299 people were ineligible.
just my site, there was, 40 staff ineligible. So with everybody we've talked to, and I'm sure the providers that are here on the meeting today, just knowing the numbers helps us understand and be able to process what we would like to do in the future. And that's what we're truly collecting the data for, is that we can help the process in the future. So that
did I hear you right? Did you just say 299 were deemed ineligible?
Well, in the question number one that DCYF provided us, it's a 299 person difference in the numbers that they gave, which we know more than 299 employees were ineligible.
Right. So these numbers are providers, and I'm going to take responsibility for that. I think that this was my fault because I did not think about that distinction. I should have been more specific in the note that I passed along.
So those are providers.
Those are providers,
like centers as a whole.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so like Katie being one provider, having 45 staff, that doesn't give us the information we're after.
Yeah, I didn't anticipate that that distinction at all. So I'm going to take, I think I just sent over a vague question, so it wasn't clear. So I have reached out to clarify the ask there. So I'll let you guys know what I hear.
Wonderful. Yeah, it just helps us to have those numbers. I mean, it's not like we can do much now, but Julie and I, we've been on a lot of meetings. Julie's been on so many meetings and meeting with so many people, but we just want answers. And a lot of these questions are really great, and we did get the answers that help us to understand, but the WAC is still the main thing that is questioned. It does not say specifically that that box has to be clicked, and it did not say that the box had to be clicked in, the explanation of the grant initially. So I think that's where us providers have the most,
It is frustrating to get an email back referring to the WAC, which was referred to in the answer on question 3.
Yeah.
And it does say early learning program staff records must be, and then they skipped to A. The way that the WAC is actually written, there's bullets and then there's sub bullets, and item 1 isn't referring in item 1, it doesn't refer to merit until you get to B. Item 1 actually goes on to say an early learning provider must establish a record system for themselves. And then under that, it says that the early learning program records must be verified by the licensee, center director, assistant director, or program supervisor. So I think most folks took that and realized that they needed to not just accept records that are handed to them. They actually have to look at them and make sure that they are not expired, and that because we're talking about a record system that folks have established for themselves. For me, I have a file on every employee with all of their papers, and I do look at all of those records. My program supervisor looks at all those records. And then you go to B, where it finally mentions merit, and it says we have to enter and maintain the workforce registry. But it doesn't say anything in here about confirming each employee in the pop-up all the way to the right, which doesn't even fit on the screen, by the way. You have to either know to scroll, or you have to reduce your screen to 90%. But yeah, you're right, Katie. The WAC is frustrating that they keep referring to it, because we've all read that WAC. We all know what it says. And
there's so many of us that have had licensors on site just recently, and that was never even required or suggested or talked about. In the 10 plus years I've been on merit, never once have I been told to click that box for my staff.
And the WAC doesn't say anything about clicking on a box or anything about using a confirmed box, all it says is that you have to verify your own records. So that
Yeah.
is frustrating, and I think we need to work on how we write a question back to DCYF about that.
Yeah.
I just want to give a moment. There's some people who've had their hands raised for a while, so I want to make sure we get to those.
I'm sorry, Angela, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Brianna and Susie had their hands up before me. I'll let them go first.
I don't see Brianna. Susie, you
Hi there.
Oh, there you are.
There she is.
Okay.
It's Brenna. So I just wanted to speak to that a little bit in terms of confusion around what verified means. Absolutely agree with everything you guys just said. That was really ambiguous, the way that that was, the directions for that were very ambiguous in my opinion. But also my issue was the phrase other. When you had an employee marked as other, I actually had 4 employees who are assistant teachers and admin who were marked as other, who were ineligible for the grant. At why they were marked other, well, admin makes sense because they're admin. But my teachers, I don't know at what point they went in and created other as their job title, but that's what it was. And I wasn't looking at that because it wasn't really brought to my attention. So I had 4 teachers who work in it was 3 admin and 2 teachers, 2 teachers that were marked as other that shouldn't have been, but didn't get funds. So I think it's worth mentioning. It's worth mentioning because I actually wrote DCYF and we went back and forth in emails over this, and there was really no great explanation as to any clarification around not being able, if you were an other in the system, you were not eligible unless you wrote a description and included their name and STARS number stating what their position was. So I did that for my kitchen coordinator because he was marked as other and he got the funds. But I didn't mark that for my admin staff because their administration are marked as other. So I don't know how you would word that, but that was more frustrating than anything because it was my bad on one of the admin. They were still self-entered and weren't verified. I actually understood that I needed to go in and verify. I just missed that one. But I think there was plenty of room for improvement on that, like you guys were saying. But the other piece, I guess, is what I'm getting at, that I think needs to be addressed in some way and provided some clarity. Just in this, I have lots more to say about this, but for right now, I'll let someone else share their experience.
Thank you. Thank you, Britta. Susie?
As Brenda said, I have a lot of comments on this, but I'll make 2. One is that Eric gave us the total staff that received the payment, but I think we want to be able to compare that to the total number of staff that we thought should receive it so that we understand where.
Well, that's not staff, just to be clear. That's the number that we got was how many sites.
No, it says
No,
total
Julie-
staff that received a payment is 18,000.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But
In
that's
the chat,
okay.
that's
Yeah,
what
sorry,
Eric just
Julie,
put.
yeah. That clarification. And then the other thing is I am seeking out the people who had the box checked to see how in the world they knew to check the boxes. And that has been fascinating because a lot of it is one licensor 15 years ago or 10 years ago, or when they first came on, was a stickler for those boxes. Nobody else knew anything about the boxes. That's been interesting to see who actually knew to them. And that is so telling because it is a directive from a specific person, never mentioned again by any licensor. So just to add that to the conversation.
Yeah.
Susie, that's actually my comment. is that the only reason I knew about those boxes and I was that caught up on it was that my licensor, 2 licensors ago, who I had for many years, Ed, was a stickler for boxes, and I had to have everybody confirmed or verified and then confirmed. And I only had to catch up on like 1 or 2 brand new people who eventually actually didn't even get it because they were others. They were substitutes. One was a substitute and one was actually a volunteer, so she didn't even qualify. My problem was that I had a brand new licensor when this rolled out who did not know about the boxes. I had to educate a licensor about how to, I had to take off a director actually, and I had to be reassigned so I could actually do the work on it. My brand new licensor did not know how to approve me or Tanya to be able, Tanya and I worked together on this call. Our brand new licensor did not know how to approve us in the system and to do the rest of the work to finish it so I could check my little box. And so our problem was communication with our licensor, her actually getting back to us, telling her this is very, very important, and then her not even knowing what she needed to do, and her having to get assistance from other people within licensing. And like specifically, I had a phone call with her and I'm like, if you look at my screen, I don't know if you can see the screen the way I see it or not. You need to check, you need to allow me so I can check boxes. You have to put me in the capability so I can be an administrator on here. My licensor did not know how to do that. She was so new. She did not know the steps she had to do to allow me to do my job to do this. And so she had to get technical assistance from her upline supervisor. And so for me, that was our struggle in our building. I already knew about all the confirms and stuff because I had a previous licensor who had been on us to do it. But like for us, it was like I finished the last day at like 5 o'clock just because my licensor was so slow in the process, helping us get to the point where we could do it. So that was our issue with the whole thing.
So folks that have been saying, my licensor didn't tell me, right? And that's true of me too. My licensor didn't tell me. I just would ask if you could comment if you agree with what I'm just about to say. Like, I'm not mad at my licensor. My licensor didn't know. I didn't know. My thought is nobody's mad at the licensors for not knowing this. This has not been part of the process. This has not been part of what's been expected of anyone until it was used against us. And I don't see how this is the fault of providers or licensors.
Correct. And we're just here to educate, as many people that, as providers, we are the voice of letting you know, hey, this is what, majority of providers are saying. They're upset, they're angry, they're unhappy. We have providers that are unhappy about the tax portions. We have providers unhappy about, not getting it for all of their staff. We have providers upset about, there's so many different layers of this grant, but we just want to educate, DCYF on, okay, this is what happened. This is what the recourse is, but what can we do for the future? What are we asking? And that's just basic communication and working with us on grants, working with us to, for it to be a positive, not a negative. Because Julie and I have heard more negative than positive. And yes, there are providers out there that are very happy with the grant, and that's wonderful. But majority of providers are very upset with what has happened. And we just want to educate, communicate, and figure out what can we do in the future together? What can we do to make our providers happy and that they feel heard, and that it's equity all around for a grant, not a little box that wasn't clipped, not my licensor didn't know, didn't tell me. At first the anger was all over all of these Zooms, and I know DCYF has been on a lot of them and they've been taking a lot of heat, but we just want to work with you guys. We want to know what's going on with the grants, and we want to be able to have a say in, oh, that's probably not going to be a good idea, or that won't be feasible for centers that are XYZ. We want to work with you guys. So
Well, merit wasn't ready. Like merit
No, not at
has
all.
never been ready to be used in this type of fashion. It's never been used for a grant before. And
No.
during our August meeting, we did have some feedback that would have been helpful, you know, had they created a category for subs, then my sub who's worked 5 hours this year would not have gotten the grant. She should not have been eligible, and she got the grant. One of 4 staff. And so it's frustrating when the feedback that is given is not incorporated, and then the thing that is used against us wasn't even discussed. It wasn't shared because we would have had feedback. I'd love to hear more stories where folks can, oh, sorry, Travis.
Well, I was going to jump in. I've been listening to folks and hearing what everybody's saying. I think there's also another factor. I think licensing can take some ownership here, right? And part of it is that we haven't been out in the field for 2 years, right? So we were doing these monitor visits that were not a typical monitor visit, and we've had a bunch of turnover in staff. I mean, the example of the new staff is exactly what we're dealing with, right? We have a lot of staff that are not trained, right? And I think it's more important even now to partner with you, because you're exactly right. Some of you guys train our staff, right? Some of you guys have been doing this for years and years, and you get somebody coming in and you know, you train them and work with them. You know, so I think that is some of the issue is that because we weren't doing monitor visits, some of the paperwork stuff was being done at the desk. With what I mean is that they were looking at merit at their desk and doing some of this, and it wasn't a high priority, right? We were trying to deal with the COVID stuff. So I think that a lot of this is the system wasn't as clean as it was supposed to be to roll this out, you know, and that's what happened. So I don't think licensing's in the clear here. I think that we need to take ownership for, you know, some of this as well. So
thank you,
Julie, I appreciate you.
But Travis, we know that licensors don't use merit to verify our staff on the yearly declaration that we have to submit. We have to write it down. So, you know, if you guys were using merit in the way that is now being used against us, then it would be allowed when it's time for the declaration. We wouldn't be asked to write it all down.
We were, I mean, here's the thing, Julie, it is a whack, right? It is. That's
debatable. That's not,
I
you're
know,
not going to have agreement here from providers. We've all been very, very familiar with the whack.
I think the question is were we regulating to it, right? And I think at pre-COVID, I think we were doing a better job to regulating it and you know, talking to your folks about being in compliance with it. And I think that there was a gap there, and I think we've had some turnover in staff, and you have somewhat of the perfect storm. I'm just owning our portion with licensing on this issue, right? And so should we have done a better job and probably have said, hey, let's check merit and see what merit looks like? Yes. I think I'll be the first one to say, yeah, we could have done that.
Well, I guess the question for me then is, were you guys part of the conversation about using merit for the grant? Because if they had said, we're going to do this and we're going to rule out people in the other category and we're going to rule out people that are self-entered, I think that would have caused some questions, definitely among providers and possibly among licensing staff, had they been part of the conversation.
Yeah, I think the department has to have its own conversations of, you know, what happened here, right? So, yeah. and I don't know. I have to go find out, Julie.
I appreciate you saying you're taking some ownership, but like, how can you take ownership for something that you weren't, if you weren't involved in the discussion about using merit in that way? It just seems.
I don't know that. I don't know that, Julie. I'm not saying that we weren't. I don't, you know, I mean, it could have.
Sure.
Somebody else could have had the conversation.
Sure. Thank you. Susan?
Yeah, I think that my concern with even the conversation today, Travis, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but like when we met with you all earlier on, the only thing that you referenced was that, well, we have the WAC, but but you didn't say any of what you said today then. that there's some ownership on DCY, and maybe that might have been the difference to at least having DCYF take a closer look and maybe have prevented the distribution of fund, like give the pause that was necessary to prevent this further catastrophe that has happened. So I appreciate hearing your feedback today and the acknowledgement that there may be some responsibility, but you're the first person that I've heard from DCYF say that. And I don't know if others have heard anything from DCYF either, but so I will say, I appreciate you saying it today. I wish you had spoken up sooner. And we have a huge conundrum now that is costing not just emotionally for people, but financially. And like I mentioned earlier, we have centers without licensors and new directors in those centers who were deemed ineligible because of that. And why haven't we gotten a notification from DCYF saying we're fixing that because we were wrong, we screwed up? That hasn't happened yet either. So I'm curious why. I mean, if you know why haven't those corrections been made?
And I don't have an answer for that today. I mean, that's again, DCYF needs to have a conversation and figure this out. And I'm just taking the ownership from a licensing point of view that we haven't been out in the field, right? We haven't been doing typical monitors, and we pivoted because of COVID and, trying to make, frankly, trying to listen to all of you, that what you were going through out in the field. And so, we took a different course. And I think that, it's somewhat of the perfect storm from a licensing point of view. Now, I don't think that there's a lot that we missed, right? Like, I think when you start looking at some of the lists that you brought up, I think that we even gone back and fixed some of those. I know it's after the fact, but, it's a small number that we missed from our side of directors is what I'm saying.
Right, except for the ripple effect of that is if directors aren't verified, then they can't verify their staff.
Yeah.
And so it's a bigger issue than just the director's part.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to make sure we get to some of the raised hands also. It's like Susie.
When we teach a chemistry class, and the kids don't pass a test, we don't look at the kids and say, what did you do wrong here? You didn't follow the directions, what have you. We look at the teacher and say, you need to try again. We have too many really fastidious, capable, long-standing providers that didn't know they were supposed to check the box in order to verify. So the WAC aside, which isn't clear, the instructions on what verified means, which aren't clear, and the lack of licensors knowing that this was a box that you have to move a screen to check, is not in the hands of the providers that were trying to do the right thing, getting this grant. It's the system that didn't work, and all of the providers would have checked the box if they had known about the box. So I get very frustrated with this roundabout thing of, like, we didn't know about the box. Really good people doing really good work didn't know about the box because it wasn't clear that needed to be done. And I just feel like, why are we continuing to be blamed for this? It's not the director's problem. They didn't know about the box. I don't know what else to say about it. And what are we doing now about this? We've got providers that are paying out of pocket thousands of dollars, like $10,000.
Or returning the grant.
In order to make up for the grant. And like, what can we, I really appreciate moving forward on, like, okay, now we all know about the box. So that's not going to be an issue. There are other licensing, getting everybody up to speed, having good communication on that. But this grant in particular, like, what are we doing? How are we fixing these for these providers so that they can have something to give to their staff and not just, 2 out of 10 of their staff? I don't know. Do we have any solutions? Does DCY have any solutions about what the next steps could be?
I think we need to include that in our questions that we ask back to them. You know, unfortunately, most of us feel like, I think all applications started rolling in, and they started, you know, using Katie as an example, because it's a lot when you've got 45 staff and only 4 were approved. That should have been a red flag. And these applications were coming in like that, and they were disapproving large numbers of staff. They should have said, whoa, why are we ruling out so many people? Okay, it's this box. Let's send out new instructions and make sure everyone's clear. Let's give it 5 more days. Let's get this right. But they just barreled ahead, and it's not okay. But I know that it's been said by a few people, not DCYF, but I've heard it said in the community, well, this is a gift. People are complaining about a gift, but it's a gift that is costing us money that we don't have to make people whole, or we're having to return the gift because we cannot afford to make people whole. It's an impossible situation for so many. Dawn, you have your hand up again?
Yeah, I just, I'm hoping my internet cut out this time. Travis, you kept mentioning over and over that, you know, it was because of COVID. This is the reason why licensors weren't out there, the reason we didn't know about the box. Yet I know from many providers that are on here, from many providers that we have heard from repeatedly that have been in the field and directors for years now, well before COVID, did not know about this box and needed to be confirmed. So to use COVID as an excuse of why we didn't know about this box seems inappropriate of an excuse from DCYF. It is because as soon as I found out about this box, all of my staff is now confirmed. There should have been an instruction page in the grant that said scroll over and make sure your staff is verified in this as a picture showing us how to do that. To leave it as, well, it's just licensors weren't out there during COVID. That's not where, like, this was well before COVID. There's people, I've been in this field for a very long time. I was verified, but I have no idea by who or when. I have some staff that have been in the field a long time and they were verified, others that have and weren't verified. So to say that this was something that was just COVID, a snafu from COVID because licensors weren't out there, feels like a cop-out. I'm sorry. I really appreciate you coming here, and I don't want to just like keep all this on you, but to say that it's because of COVID just really feels like a cop-out.
Well, it's not called out because it's factual, because we had the new WAC roll out in 2019, right? We never even got a full monitoring cycle with the new regulations, right? Because we had systems changing and everything, and so that went into effect. That WAC went into effect in 2019. So we didn't even get a full cycle to go out and tell folks, hey, this needs to be done. Now, some of you did, because some of you are saying, I knew about the box, I checked the box, I talked to my licensor. I mean, Ed's a perfect example, right? He's a veteran licensor that's been around a long time. But some of you didn't. And I'm just owning that. I'm not using COVID as an excuse. It's just facts. It's the perfect storm that lined up.
So I just have a follow-up question then. So that was having your staff verified was a new WAC that came out in 2019.
Yes, I believe the language changed. Yeah.
Okay, but that's in relation to a licensor. That's in relation to a licensor verifying. There's nothing in the WAC about confirming. And I just am gonna request that people use different language. Only a licensor can verify. Only a director can confirm staff. Confirming, not in the WAC.
Brenna, you have a hand up?
Yes. I think we can all agree that the checking boxes and all of that was BS, sorry. Not a great use of could have used improvement. But what I'm curious to move on a little bit from this is just to find a little more information about, and I'm wondering if this question could be posed differently, because I know I'm not the only one wondering. On item number 11, it states, and I think everybody probably asked this, if I have funds, someone doesn't work here anymore and they were granted funds, can I allocate those funds to another employee? Well, the clear answer I've received through email is no. DCYF has been very clear, no. And then it states the answer to this question is no. And the reason is because there are accountability measures that you guys need to meet and follow because you receive these public funds. So what I'm wondering, you know, what are these requirements? Why were they set up this way? And if we can't get wiggle room from DCYF because these were public funds, is there wiggle room to get, you know, from whoever you got these funds from, wherever they came from, you know, I would like to know where they came from exactly, because I'm just wondering if we should be having these conversations with where the funds came from. Because if you guys can't do anything about it, I understand why you can't, but can this be pushed further beyond DCYF, and what can DCYF do to advocate for all of these providers having these issues? Because your guys' hands are tied, and I understand that. So there's nothing you can do about, well, allocating these funds differently if you have a guideline and you had to follow these protocols in order to receive these funds to begin with. So I'm just wondering if we could get a little more information about item 11 and where these funds came from, and what, you know, is there any wiggle room with this? Because that's the answer. We want to, that would answer and solve a lot of problems here. Because
So
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think my audio's a little jumpy. So sorry if I
That's
cut you
okay.
off by accident. I do have an update on that. So after this went out, Matt Judge contacted me, letting me know that there's a little more context to that answer as of late yesterday afternoon. So to answer your question, this money is from the federal government. And so these, as far as like returned funds for reallocation, from my understanding, that is a very standard kind of like boilerplate compliance measure in most of these grants, where if any funds are returned, that's considered money left on the table, and then we lose it. That's the standard, but that's not necessarily the final answer. There's one thing we can try, and we have started that process where Matt applied for an exemption to that. And what that would look like is if we get the exemption, then the federal government would say, okay, we approve you hanging on to those funds to reallocate under the umbrella of this retention grant. So that's what we would like to do. I also want to put it out there that as of yesterday, I don't know if any funds have been returned. They are anticipating at least a small number of them to be returned for sure. Like around like the substitute, other, you know, categories, things of that nature. But I just wanted to put that on the radar, just like.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, but Brenna's question is really about who's the roadblock for us allocating it
Title IX
differently, because when we had that meeting last Monday with DCYF and we asked that question, if you have 20 staff, only 10 get it, you're supposed to give it 700 of the 10, can you spread it out and give $2,350 instead? There was hesitation. There was we would have to change the rules that we've already sent out to all of you. We will consider it. We probably
I want to
won't.
clarify that. That there's no, DCYF has absolutely no authority over those compliance measures, like zero. The only thing we can do is like petition or apply for changes to the standard system. So the people who Matt reached out to apply for the exemption is Title IX. And so it's the federal government, which is the granting authority. So that's the only org that could possibly change the compliance measures. But
okay, but the federal government doesn't have anything to do with our merit system. They didn't know anything about how this was going to be rolled out. So the fact that DCYF put a rule in place that disallowed a vast majority of, well, vast majority of my staff, a vast majority of many people's staff, that wasn't federal, that was internal with DCYF. So why, I think we need more clarity around why it can't be allocated fairly, distributed fairly among staff within an organization. The feds didn't make up that rule.
They did. So it's a federal rule that when we're granted this grant money to allocate, that allocation is set in stone at that point, and then we have the permission to spend the money in the exact way that we allocated it, nothing else. So and this is standard for every grant that I've ever come across, unless I think it might be possible to kind of tweak that before it rolls out. But that any funds that are returned or rejected for any reason is considered money left on the table because it's not being allocated in the way that we were federally approved to allocate. So that money just goes back and back. We don't have any access to it at that point.
I understand that, but we're talking about internally, and we're talking about the fact that
those things don't impact each other. Like what happens internally does not impact the federal compliance measures. The federal compliance measures are what they are, regardless of any context that might happen internally. That's why Matt turned around to apply for an exemption, because he said, we've encountered this issue, right? And this money would help us address the issue that came up in the distribution of these funds. So that's what DCYF is asking permission to do. But
you're talking, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, Erin. You're talking about if there is money that comes back.
Right.
We're not talking about that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I think what she's saying, what I meant was, and I think you're both kind of talking about the same thing, just different aspects, but what I'm saying is, I think is what you're speaking to, Aaron, is he applied for an exemption so that any funds, well, not returned. I'm referring to funds. So say I have 2 employees who no longer work here anymore, and they were eligible for the funds. Before sending that back and hanging on to it before the deadline, if we can allocate those funds to people who deserved it and worked here and were actually on the application the day of, but were found ineligible, that's what I'm meaning. But I'm also curious, while saying this, if it's great that there's an exemption for the funds and potentially being able to reallocate them, what's the likelihood of this being done by the deadline? And if they agree to that and they say, yes, you can reallocate these funds to the appropriate parties, then if we get past that, what is it, December 30th is the deadline? Do we start the process all over, or do we have to I think the only part that concerns me there is if people have to decide whether they're sending these funds back because they can't afford to make up for those who didn't get the bonus, the grant, they're going to be kind of in this weird spot if they send it all back and then all of a sudden there's this exemption that says, oh yeah, here's this money back. But then also they're taking a gamble by paying their teachers, keeping the money and giving it to those that were eligible, hoping that later on, they would be awarded the money. And if owners or decide to pay out of their own pocket to those that weren't eligible, and then this money comes later, but it's only specifically allocated for these individuals, you know, I'm just think I'm raising some points that could get a little messy. While it's awesome that Matt has that exemption now and, you know, that he's working on that, I could see this getting a little messy and hope that we can talk that through if that exemption ends up being passed or approved.
Thanks, Brenna. That's an excellent question. I don't know but that's a really good question. Like if that exemption is granted, does that reset clock? Like, do we get an additional, like, do we get like a different deadline to figure out how to use those reallocated funds? So that is an excellent question. I'll ask Matt, I'll connect with Matt, and I'll, if he even knows this, maybe that's something to be negotiated. I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back to something I heard that really upset me a little bit ago when I think it was, and I'm sorry, Travis, but when someone says they weren't in the field due to COVID, not a good thing to say in a room of providers that were in the field every day doing the work. That's that's not an excuse to me, and that really bothers me that you say, well, you know, oh, I wasn't in the field, I was at home. We were not, and we were not safe.
No. I
I'm sorry, that was very offensive.
But I've been very outspoken the whole time and appreciative to all providers. Yes, you're exactly right. You guys saved the childcare system in Washington State because you guys did go to work and run your centers. What I'm saying is we were respecting that because we didn't want to spread COVID. So we made the choice not to do on-site visits is what happened, right? That's all I'm saying. And I give you all the credit. I mean, we were staying out so that we weren't spreading it, right? We didn't want to cause more issues. And the other thing is you guys were, it was crazy, right? You didn't need us coming in and doing monitor visits during that time. Right? We needed to support you. So I want to clear, I give you all a ton of credit. So if that came off that way, I apologize. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Lorena?
Hi. Going back to what she's saying about the licensors not being out in the field, we did had a lot of providers having visits by the licensors. I was one of them during COVID, before COVID, and then after COVID. So within the past 3 years, and that's the one that you're talking about, after 2019, that what came up stating that we had to verify employees. During the past 3 years, I had 4 different visits from the licensor. I had the last time we worked 2 hours verifying 2 employees that I have, only 2, because I'm an in-home licensed childcare provider. I only have 2. We were 2 hours in person, 2 hours online, and 3 days by email, verifying my employees. And only 1 qualified because I put it in a different box that says, if you have others. So both of them were verified, not once, not twice, but 4 times within the past 3 years. So if we checked and make sure that they were verified and merit, why they didn't show up as being my employees or assistants? So we're not gonna pinpoint at anybody, but within the past 3 years, I believe all providers, at least all providers that I know and providers that I've been in meetings with, have had the licensor either coming to their homes and do inspections or did a Zoom meeting and they were all verified, all employers. I have a center director that I work with, and she had 6 employees only. Within the past 2 years, since she opened her center, she had 7 visits from the licensor, 7, because since she just barely opened, she was having visits every 6 months. And only 2 of her employees qualified. And the other 4, what happened to the other 4? They were having visits every 6 months and they were verified through the licensor, through the director, through everybody on merit with all the paperwork. Why they didn't show up on merit?
Thank you, Lorena. I also want to call out that we do have a breakout activity to gather some of this feedback. We want to make sure that we're getting all of your comments and thoughts as organized as possible so that we can use that to inform our next steps internally at DCYF, but also help guide your next steps as a subcommittee for how you want to make sure this we take these lessons forward with us as we think about next year. But I want to, we have a little bit of time. So if anybody has anything else they would like to share, feel free to do so. Otherwise, we can go into breakouts. Julie and Katie, do you have anything to add?
Well, I mean, I was hoping to hear some numbers, like if providers have, I know I keep pointing to Katie, I'll use my own example. 4 out of 11 were approved. 1 was a sub, 1 was myself, and 2 part-timers. I'd love to hear quick numbers from providers here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I had 4 out of 45 and 1 was an other. She was my cook and was not verified, did not have the box clicked, but yet she got it. And then myself and 2 of my leads. So Brenna, how many did you have?
I got, see, we have 2 buildings with 2 different licenses. So I'm just pulling both of them. So we had 45 and I got 40 were approved. Yeah, there's 5 that didn't. And that was a combination. 1 I didn't verify, confirm. I can't verify, but I didn't confirm it. And then 2 were teachers, full-time teachers, and 2 administration.
And why didn't they get the money?
Because, well, one of them, also administration, I didn't check the box, the confirmed box. And then the others were marked as other because that's what they were supposed to be marked as. Actually, they weren't in merit. 2 were supposed to be assistant teachers, and I don't know why they were others, but they were others, so that's why.
We didn't get a letter. Our licensor never updated our Washington Compass page, and I think that's maybe why. Did everybody receive the same amount? Like amount per person? Was it $700 per person?
Yeah.
Yeah, then all of mine were
Okay. You didn't get an email with like the specific names? See, I got 2
Nothing.
separate emails for 2 separate licenses with a list of everybody that got it. But then because they're not going to call out who didn't get it. So you had to go in and pull out your roster and actually process of elimination, figure out who wasn't on the list. But yeah, no, I got a detailed email.
2 days ago, I got a check in the mail with nothing. No
Okay, I talked to a local colleague yesterday who had a deposit for 700 and she didn't understand the grant and who that was for. And I told her about the email on November 21st. She said she didn't get one. I said, check your spam. she called me back later and said it went to like her personal email. It's whatever email is associated with your Merit account.
Oh, well, I'll November 21st.
Yeah.
I'll go check my spam and my personal, but not to my TCC.
Yeah, it's not going to go to your whatever work email you use. It's however, whatever email is associated with your own personal STARS number.
That's wrong. That's inappropriate.
Is that how I get all of my stuff?
Is that something that could be looked into, whoever is here from DCYF, on trying to figure out how, like, because same thing for me, all of my work stuff that's through Merit goes to my personal email. And so there's lots of things in the beginning that I was missing until I would go back through and check my personal emails. So I feel like it should be going to like our work email or something like that, not our personal emails.
You can go in Merit and actually change the contact, the form of contact. I've thought about it, but if I change jobs one day, I don't want to have to go back in and then have that lag time of stuff going to my work email that I don't have anymore. So I've just, for that purpose, kept it on my personal.
I've had my Merit account longer than my company has had an email address for me. So that's also weird.
All right, so Jen shared that 5 out of her 10 were approved due to the not being confirmed. Oh, Susan, you don't know how many were deemed ineligible? Oh, there it is. 31 staff, 8 eligible, 17 eligible who did not get the grant. Okay. And 6 that were ineligible who were awarded the grant? Were those subs or what?
Well, some of them were employees that are no longer with us, but because our licensors in some cases didn't verify the directors, and because of this thing about when you're a multi-site organization, the organization doesn't have access to all the individual Merit accounts, only one person and another designee or whatever. So like I can't even see the Merit accounts because I don't use them regularly enough. So I'm not listed as someone who can get it. But anyway, yeah, so because of the licensors not doing whether it's confirm or verify the director couldn't make, put the end dates for when people left, so on and so forth. So that's what happened to us.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing. And Katie, did you have anything else? I guess there was a breakout thing. I didn't realize that, but yeah, did you have anything? Okay.
And Julie, if you let's see, if you want to continue the conversation as a group conversation and use the questions as like guiding posts for the group conversation, you can do that as well. Or if people would prefer to tackle these questions in small groups and breakouts, we can accommodate that. I just want to make sure that we're able to get some feedback.
Yeah, do you guys have any additional questions that you want to include in the questions that we send over to DCYF?
And sorry, I misspoke. The questions are in Mentimeter, so that won't be a breakout Jamboard. It would just be people using the link to provide feedback on that, on the 3 questions. So sorry, just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, I think Katie has a really good question that needs to be included in the questions, because I've wondered the same thing. Where was the accountability on their part to look at the numbers that were coming in, realize, okay, there's not 4 staff running a center licensed for, over 100 kids. We've ruled out 40 people. So there should have been some kind of conversation, some kind of discussion. There should have been something. There was no checks and balances on their end.
I'm going to add to that, Julie, that initially when we were talking about this grant with DCYF, they gave us a number of how many people they thought would be eligible for this. And then I haven't seen the numbers yet. So I don't want to overstate, but I thought they said 31 and I thought they gave 19. And so then there again, it's like, even with their own estimation, they should have known when they're looking at the numbers coming in that something was terribly wrong.
Well, and why did they ask when we filled out the grant, how many staff do you have? Why ask that question if that wasn't even part of going into who was going to be confirmed and allowed this grant money? I mean, if I put 45 and then you go into the merit and I have 45 staff, but technically there's only 4 confirmed or 3, why there's just that discrepancy between the two systems of the grant application versus merit. So why ask us how many staff we had if that wasn't even going to go into, who was eligible?
Well, and is that confirming? When you say I have this many staff, is that the definition of confirming? If you look at your merit and you say, okay, I've looked at all these people, they're all here. I'm going to confirm I have 45 by writing 45 on the application. If I didn't know what a definition of confirm meant, that seems like confirmation.
Exactly.
So in looking at the questions that were submitted to them and they already answered, question 10 says, when exactly, the date, what was the date that you decided to utilize merit? I think we need to be more specific because they did point to the August provider supports meeting and saying that they came and said they wanted to utilize merit. But when did they decide to use merit in a way that would disqualify some folks? That was never discussed. When did they decide to use a confirmed checkbox?
Well, the majority of people aren't on these calls. So it's not about when they told the group that they were going to be doing this, but when it was in writing that people needed to use the checkbox in order to confirm. When did they decide that they needed to use the checkbox? And that's how they were going to decide that people were confirmed. And then how was that communicated to the field?
Right, because a lot of us have printed out the application that we filled out, and it did not say that.
Well, and then to ask you to use the FAQ when the directions were so clear, nobody reads the instructions of screwing a light bulb. Right, unless you've never done screwing a light bulb before, and maybe some people did then, like there were a couple of new directors that, I'm sure read it all because they were like, I don't know anything about this, but the directions were really simple.
Right.
And we had already done a couple of grants this year. So there was also some familiarity. Those programs that are in Seattle area, Puget Sound area, or I guess it's Seattle that already did the grant, like there was some history here of people already doing these grants without this merit box meaning anything to those grants. So if there's going to be a switch of how these grants are now being determined, that needs to be really clear. Because we don't have a lot of time. The directions are really simple. You're confirming your number of staff and you're moving forward. So if there's going to be a change in the way that the system is going to use merit, that needs to be like red flagged.
Yeah, and I know that this is my next question impacts a small number of providers, but there were some newly licensed programs, maybe, I don't know, in the last year or so, and they were not eligible because they did not they were not able to apply for the stabilization grant. So I'm curious why that was required, because it did rule out new programs. Anything that benefits staff should have benefited all of the staff.
I think one of the questions that I still haven't gotten an answer to is, what was DCYF's goal in actually having this grant process? Was the goal really to clean up data and merit, or was the goal really as a retention strategy for the childcare sector and support the work that we've done? Because the goal for the grant also is a factor in maybe why some of the decisions were made that were made, but yet we were not told. We were all under the belief it was workforce retention, not clean up the merit database. So what was the goal of the grant from a DCYF perspective? That's my question.
I think you're going to have to tweak that question, because it was asked, what was the goal with these funds? And it was answered. So maybe changing the question a bit.
So I must have missed the answer. I apologize. Still, at the end of the day, it feels like there's not clarity on any of it. Because basing the grant on awards on merit is seems like, as someone else said, or in one of the meetings with WCCA, this was an epic fail, because there's so many factors that weren't considered before, during, and during the grant process, and now while we're in this horrible situation. So anyway, I apologize for I must not have heard the answer or retained it.
Oh, no, it's number 7 on the feedback questions. What was the goal with the funds? And they said that during the past year, DCYF heard from providers that they wanted some additional support with staffing issues. Unspent federal funds that the agency was given for administering the federal stabilization grants were used to create an additional grant round. These dollars were intended to be an add-on for providers who had already received stabilization grants. So they did answer it, but they're not addressing the fact that it was, the goal didn't match the outcome, because the outcome is a lot of morale issues, a lot of staff feeling completely left out and defeated by this. So maybe you can tweak your question.
Let me think about it. Okay, I've thought of it. What does DCYF have any intention to try to make this right across the board?
Okay, so can that question be captured?
Can they get more funds if they've already submitted the paperwork? I mean, can more funds come down the line, or it is what it is?
I just wanted to add that comments that are being shared verbally are being captured in the minutes to be included with the rest of this feedback. So if you share verbally, we will make sure it's added to this.
Okay, and the question about how will DCYF reallocate the money sent back for staff that are no longer there? The question that was asked and answered was number 5. What will DCYF do with the funds that are being returned? And they just said they have not received any grant funds. Further, DCYF has no authority to repurpose the federal funding. And that was the update that Aaron provided, was that Matt was looking into, right? He was looking into that.
He filed an exemption, but he's not optimistic about hearing back on that before Christmas.
Yeah, I'm confused about, there's been pushback from DCYF saying that the language about confirming staff was in the application when, like I said, a lot of us printed out the application that we submitted, and we saw that it wasn't in there, but the language changed, but they've said the language didn't change. So is there a question that we can ask to address that very specifically? I just don't know.
I'm not sure if this is helpful, but for this specific question, but maybe I think maybe the better, like, asking when rules changed is a different question than asking, like, when did this language get updated? When did this get clarified? Because the response we'll keep getting if asking, like, when did DCWF change the rules, is we did not change the rules. That's the response. So I would say maybe just being a little more specific about, like, when did this particular element change or, get updated? What was the process of that? I think that might lead to some more clarifying information.
Yeah, their response pointed to WAC. And really what the question was intended to be was, when did this become part of the grant requirements? Checking the confirmed box. When did that become
added to the instructions?
Right. When did that get added to the instructions?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to ask it that might get more to the spirit of your question. So. And I did want to call out, so here's the second question on the screen, but also if you have any feedback about any of these pieces, feel free to share in the chat or unmute and share verbally. We'll make sure it's added. I just wanted to call out, we have this question and one more question to get to before we break for lunch. So, and the third question is something I would really like to get your guys' input on specifically, is how should the subcommittee move forward on this topic? Are there actions that you guys want to take internally, either informing the work plan or responding in any other kind of way? Just any ideas you might have on how the provider support subcommittee would like to move forward with this topic.
Well, and are the committee members content with written updates? I would ask. I feel like that's what DCYF was comfortable with this time. But, maybe we want to again request for them to attend and provide their questions or their responses to the questions during a meeting. I don't know. Is it helpful to have this time to tweak the questions? Are we cool with written updates? What do you guys want to do?
I think so. I think that there's, everybody has such busy lives, and that having the written answers and communication is communication. I mean, we can all receive it at the same time and be able to respond, over email if we need to. But I think in moving forward on this topic, we just want to request that we collaborate with, the grants department, before they put forth another grant, be able to collaborate with us and be able to show us what's coming down the line and what they think will be best and what's feasible for us as providers. Will it be equal for all of us providers, family and centers? Just that collaboration, not just, okay, we made a grant, here it is. Oh, well, we're going to change it just a little bit and, make everybody a little upset. But just collaboration, work with us. We want it to be fair.
I just wanted to call out on that note, an email went out, I think yesterday, and we'll include information about this in the follow-up email, but there is a special webinar. The Early Learning Division is hosting a special webinar for ELAC and provider supports on the upcoming equity grant design. So I wish I had more. I asked for it, I think a little too late yesterday to get a little bit of an outline of exactly what's going to be addressed in that webinar. I'll share that when I have it, but so I just wanted to put that out there that there is an upcoming opportunity to collaborate on the grant conversation. And I will do my best to try to get more information about what exactly you'll be collaborating on with that, but just wanted to call that out.
I did see that. It looks great. I won't be able to attend that one, unfortunately, but I did see that yesterday.
And just if it's, if it's helpful for people to kind of understand how decisions like this are often made, generally, this is not a blanket rule, but generally speaking, when we have DCYF staff come present on an agenda topic, we try to make sure that only happens if they have a specific ask, right? So if they are coming to the committee, any committee, the expectation is they're coming with an ask and like a direct opportunity for feedback that they're asking with. So just to respect the time of the members. So generally speaking, if we don't have a specific ask that they're coming to the committee with, then we will request that that's provided in writing. But there's plenty of circumstances where even if there's not a specific ask, the issues like of interest or relevant or timely enough that the executive committee might say, no, let's have that as an agenda item that they're presenting on. So that's fluid. It's up to you guys completely, but I just wanted to kind of provide that additional context in case it's helpful.
Yeah, I do have one other feedback request. Could it be requested that they stop pointing to the August provider supports meeting and saying all of this was communicated?
I will definitely pass that on.
It made me question if I'd missed something, and it wasn't missed.
Well, and not every provider across the state attends this meeting either. And it may not even be on the email distribution list for the provider supports feedback loop and so on and so forth. So it's really kind of not a substantive argument to say that, when I would say like probably 90% of the childcare providers across the state do not attend this meeting. Or so that's my
thanks. Yeah, thanks for saying that. That's so true.
I don't think at this point that there's been really any accountability or responsibility by DCYF in any real meaningful way. I'm really grateful for this conversation, and all of the DCYF staff are awesome and happy to hear from them. I really appreciate all of the honesty in this conversation, but any contact we've had with legislators about this, governor's office, et cetera, has been received with, well, DCYF says it's all your fault. And it's getting to be, instead of helpful moving forward on the bigger range, and I'm again, like, this conversation's a move in the right direction, but outside of this, the small group of people here, it's getting bigger on the combative, not smaller on the combative. And I'm doing whatever I can to say, we're working to, we're trying to work together on figuring out what a solution is, but without an admission of there's an issue and that this has been hard on, ridiculously hard on providers trying to do the right thing, who have this internal now, like if you send the money back, then the teachers who were given the money are mad. If you are the only person that received the money, then you've got to decide, am I writing checks to people like personal checks to people? Like, am I giving the two people and then trying to make up the rest with a budget that doesn't exist? Like, these are not small problems. These are hugely deflating problems that are happening right before a winter break that some people don't even get. And so I'd like to work a little bit on the messaging that we're giving to folks about what the issue is. So Julie, you're asked to not blame the August meeting as like, well, anybody at that August meeting would know because it was said there. The point is that people didn't know. They would have checked the damn box if they had known. So like, how do we come, what are some solutions? I love this idea of questions that are going to get some more answers. I'd love to know what the numbers are. I'd love to know how we're going to avoid this in the future. And I want to know, like, what are we going to do about this right now? I'm willing to ask legislators for money. I'm willing to ask whomever for money. How much money do we need? I don't even know the answer to that. So I'm on my way out of this conversation because I've got at 12:30, at 11:30 that I need to go to. But I want to say thank you to all the providers who are on this call, making your case and really providing helpful information. All the advocates that are here in DCYF as well. This has been the most helpful conversation I've had about this yet. So thanks.
Well, thanks for coming, Susie. So these questions that we're going to be submitting, I think we would all like to see the questions. I assume you'll send them out before they get sent over to DCYF.
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
They can go to the committee first before they get submitted to DCYF.
You mean with like the follow-up questions? And
Yeah.
Sure.
Just to make sure that we have clarity on what we're asking.
Sure. Yeah, we can send that. We can send like a draft out with a follow-up email and you guys can approve it before we pass it on.
Thank you.
I have a question. Susie kind of hinted at it, but I don't know that it's been directly asked. And if it was, I didn't hear because I was looking through my email, looking for my letter, and I couldn't find it. Is there a funding remaining that didn't get spent this round?
Good question. I don't know.
If there's funding that didn't get spent, because somebody had said earlier they were assuming a lot more people were going to apply or a lot more people were going to get the money. If there's funding remaining, can the ones who were denied have a second go at, checking the boxes and getting the things corrected and then resubmitting for the ones who were denied? Not for everybody, just for the ones that were denied in their businesses. And if there's not funding left, can at least the amount of those who didn't get funded in the businesses that didn't get full funding for everybody, can that small amount of money be asked from legislation or government or whatever to at least fill the gap? Because it's all I'm getting from this is it was very confusing. Some people were told to do it, some people were not. Obviously, we've not all received the same information. And to move forward, to fix this, I'm a fixer, to fix this, could this be a solution? Instead of just dwelling on it and blaming and blaming and blaming, like we've spent an hour and a half being angry, can we move forward? So can we ask those questions? A, is there money remaining? And B, if there's not, can we ask for more money once we know the exact number of people who were denied because literally there was a box not checked?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I do want to say that we were told that they were expecting staff to all get somewhere in the vicinity of 200 to 300 each, but because the number that were approved was so much lower, they were able to divide it out equally, and it came to a much higher amount. So
maybe they're bad and they need to have a lesson, right? Don't have us be based off silly things like a box being checked. Let's take our word on our directors, how many people we have working for us.
right. Thank you. Okay, we'll see everybody back at noon.
All right, are we ready to move on? Do we wait for Erin? There we go. All right, so the next and the last portion of today's meeting is about the new DCYF training site for providers. So we have two professionals that are in charge of it, the Learning Management System Coordinator, Karma Hugo, and the Professional Development Coordinator, Marlene White, both from DCYF, to explain this new and hopefully exciting website for us providers. So I'll let you guys take it on. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Karma Hugo. I have been the Learning Management System Coordinator at DCYF since August, and I am here with Marlene White, Workforce Development and Public Relations Manager. And we're pleased to be here with you today to gather input for a new DCYF training site that can better meet the needs of Washington's early learning workforce. We appreciate you making time for that with us today, and know that this won't be the only opportunity that you have to give input. Next slide, please. As we think about training, we imagine a time when providers can go to a one-stop shop to complete licensing orientation, get ready for becoming a provider that can serve families receiving subsidy, take childcare basics, sign up for a CPR class, monitor staff training progress, and do all the things that help them prepare to care for children. We envision a system or a place where someone, a new provider or a business owner, can go that is streamlined, simplified, but useful and meaningful. This is a dream that we've heard from others, and people dreaming of something just less burdensome than what exists now, and something that can improve the quality of their experience as providers. Now we finally have the opportunity to create this one-stop shop. DCYF has identified a vendor to work with us in designing such a place, incorporating these dreams that we've had. They bring the shell or basic components of an online training platform that it's up to us to adapt and modify it to meet the needs of Washington's early learning workforce. Next slide.
Yeah, so we know navigating our systems can be challenging, and even simple things like searching for training or receiving credit for completing it can be confusing and feel burdensome from providers. And our team has held various stakeholder engagement opportunities around the state approved training program, the training program revision, as well as data collected from technical assistance records. And feedback has indicated that providers have difficulty searching for and finding training, and that Merit is challenging to use, especially for non-native English speakers. Merit is only available in English. We also hold live monthly webinars on various topics in relation to professional development. And some of these quotes that you see here come from that. Yeah, so let me just read the quotes, because some of them are in Spanish, but the first quote says, "Grading in the current training system is terrible. Going to each one and trying to track it, hard to tell if folks are getting emails. Very frustrating." And the second quote is was provided to us from a Spanish speaking provider during a live webinar when we asked participants, how do you prefer to take training and when? And it just says, I prefer online training so I can take them in the evenings. I wish there was a way to share more ideas and a better way to share in real time around topics. Those would be good to have. The third quote says, participants in online training spent a lot of time trying to figure out what was incomplete or complete. Trainer could see it on their end, but the participant could not see it on their end. And again, that's feedback from the state approved training program revision. This fourth one is really from those live webinars that we hold. During that same webinar, we asked participants, what additional needs does the community have or want us to know about? And this quote reads, there must be a focus to simplify in which everything is offered, training, resources that comes from one agency. So, this feedback is really focused around having an easy process and accessibility. And I'm not just talking about technology, but really like accessibility around when people can take trainings, what times of the days that are good for them. And then also those technology functions that are easy, they're streamlined, but also offer great ways to learn. So a Spanish participant was talking about those components in an online training where they are, having that interactions in a better way to engage with the content. So learners are really soaking the content that they're receiving. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. And, this is just a reminder. I mean, I'm sure everybody here knows is that the workforce is really diverse. And this is something we have to keep in mind moving forward, because the top 3 spoken languages in the early learning field are English, Spanish, and Somali. And, some providers might be bilingual, but others are not, and they only have their native tongue. So we have to be mindful when we look at these services and what we offer and how we do it. We have volunteers in early childhood settings that are young as 14. And then we also have FFN providers, family, friend, and neighbors who may be grandparents. They may be grandparents that don't even speak English, grandparents that do not know how to use technology. So, yeah, I'm just trying to paint a picture here. The other day I was in a phone call with a family, friend, and neighbor provider who was taking care of their friend's child because they were dealing with some like bad, talking about diverse audiences that come from all walks of life. So right now, this is exciting because we're in the early stages for implementation. We're just starting this work. Really what we've only done is communicated that this site is coming in 2023 to help, get people to know, oh, it's coming, and get them with that, help them with that change management piece. But we're working to make sure that the training in this site is accessible and useful and meaningful for providers. And like, I just named a couple providers who I just have had conversations with, but we're going to be working with tribal providers, non-English speakers, early learning programs that are in ESIT, ECAP, coaches, mental health consultants. So very diverse audiences that are going to be doing different things here around training. And the better training system that we have, the better we can support our diverse workforce and our growing workforce too. And that's what we're doing here today. So today we'd like to get your input and guidance around our engagement efforts as we continue to work to implement this project. So you can go ahead, go to the next slide. We're going to have our first activity. So we're going to go into breakout rooms in pairs. So 2 people per room and just around 10 minutes. So in pairs, we'd like to hear your experience. We'd like for both of you to share your experiences around looking for training. And this is currently, what is your experience looking for training, monitoring training progress, or supporting your staff in meeting training requirements? And each person just gets around 5 minutes, including like a quick hello. I believe everybody here knows each other, but if you do not, yeah, go ahead and do that. And then we're going to come back and Karma will do a follow-up. Do we have breakout rooms set or?
Yes, they've been assigned and everyone should have, a link should have popped up.
Oh, okay.
Is anybody having trouble accessing their breakout room? Tanya, Dee, Colleen, Dawn, Vicky?
Does that mean some folks are all alone in a breakout room?
Yeah, I came back to the main room because there was nobody in my breakout room.
I just tried to move. Vicky, I just tried to move you. Where are you?
She's at the bottom. She's in room 8
Okay,
already.
I'll put her in with Colleen. No, Katie, room 5.
If there's any other singletons, I think a group of 3 is just fine too. So if you need to move into a triad, that'd be great.
Yeah, I had a group of 3, but they all did not join.
Okay.
But I think everyone else is good. So we just have 2, 3.
Yeah, everyone who's active has somebody with them.
Mhm.
Good work, Jess.
Will the DCYF trainings be free? And also there are some in there now that are supposed to, like if you take infants, you have to take Safe Sleep every year, I guess. We don't take infants, but the ones that are online that say that they're required now don't provide STARS credit. And that's confusing why that would be, and hopefully that will get changed.
Hi, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for taking some time together. Now we'd really just like to get a sense of what came up for folks during the pair share as you shared your experiences looking for training, monitoring training, supporting staff and meeting training requirements and so forth. So we'd like to do an activity called a waterfall. So what I'm going to ask is if you wouldn't mind to please take a moment to type a theme or 2 from your conversation into the chat, but don't press send. Just get it all staged there. I'm going to just set a timer. We'll just take 1 minute for people to stage their themes from the conversation, and then we'll ask you to send all at the same time so we can just get a waterfall of different themes and conversations that came up. So go ahead and please take a moment, get something teed up in the chat for us, and in just a bit I'm going to ask everyone to press send.
Does that mean there will be discussion at the end, since I already asked my questions?
I'm sorry?
Will there be discussion after this?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, just about 30 more seconds to put something into the chat and get it ready to send. Okay, go ahead and hit send and let's see what came up for folks. Okay, so some folks were discussing ease of use, maybe challenge finding trainings, difficulty navigating, current training site is hard. Finding trainings that are available, perhaps not very user friendly. Yes, many of these things we have heard and are part of what we are really wanting to continue to surface, challenges that folks have. And these are certainly consistent with feedback we've heard through lots of different channels. And again, the kinds of things that we would really like to improve. Right now, we would like to just take another moment to continue to elicit some input. And so at this moment, we would like to capture some personal reflection. So if you have questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat now, and please hold on to those for the time being. So what we would like to do is I'm going to drop a Padlet into the chat. And as you've been thinking about what has been perhaps challenging or maybe the experiences you have with the current site, we'd like to capture your thinking about the kinds of things that you would like to see as you search for trainings. Find those trainings, participate in online training as you're monitoring training progress and supporting staff and meeting their training requirements. So thinking about not your current experience, but what would you like to see? And so on this Jamboard here, the link is now in the chat. We've reiterated that question. What is it that you would like to see? And we'd like to take just 5 minutes of independent time and ask that folks make a post on that Jamboard. Okay, well, I see the postings are slowing down a little bit, but please don't stop making them. We will keep this Padlet open until next week. So if you want to come back and add later or elaborate on something someone else added, please feel free to do so. All right, I'll turn it over to you, Marlene.
Oh, thank you. And I actually added a second page to the Jamboard in case people run out of space. Okay, so I'm going to talk about engagement, which I'm really excited about, and we're going to do another activity too. So, like I said, this work is really just beginning and we're in the early stages of implementation. And as we build out our communications and engagement strategy, we really want to hear from you. And I just want to say that this is really timely because it aligns with our general engagement work that we're doing within our professional development early achievers team now since we merged. And I mean, just November and December, well, it's tonight, we've held a 2-part series where it's really feedback based. We've heard from providers and coaches. They just want to get information in different ways. And in the last 2 years, we've been holding monthly webinars to really engage our audiences around different topics. Sometimes they're around qualifications. People have questions around PACE. How do I do that? How do I navigate merit? Sometimes they're very technical. Let's focus on this specific thing in merit and we'll run through it with whoever joins live, and we typically record them and post them on our website. Sometimes they're just around updates, whack changes. So yeah, like I mentioned, we hold them monthly, and the last 2 years they've really been on Zoom due to the pandemic, but this is all really timely because we're looking at ways to switch it up and really find different ways to engage our audiences in all of our work. So as we create this engagement plan for this specific training site, we really want to create this just an engagement approach of who should we be talking to, when are events happening that we should be at, that we should be, informing audiences about these changes, where are they happening, how should we be doing it? We have feedback on some of the strategies people really like. They like recordings, they can access them anytime. Are we missing anything else? So we're gonna go into another, breakout room. And for 15 minutes, so in groups of 4, you'll have 15 minutes to really go through those slides. And I added some prompts in there to try to help, think of how to answer them, like who should we be speaking to? Are there organizations we need to connect to? Who are some key players, some key stakeholders? Sometimes we have providers who join and they're like, we want you to come to our center. So yeah, just go through the slides. And like I said, this will feed into our engagement strategy as we compile this information.
All right, welcome back. Just before we take a moment to answer some questions and then wrap up for the day, I wanted to share with you the link to the web page where we are posting all the information that we have about the new training site. And this will be a place that we will be keeping current with timelines, frequently asked questions, and other useful information about the site. So please feel free to check back and keep an eye on what is posted there. I'll pass things over to you, Marlene, and then maybe we can open things up for question.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're going to be updating that page, but all updates or any specific announcements are typically made via our PD newsletter, which has like that subscription button on the page itself, or I'm going to put it in the chat as well. And this is where we communicate really everything that we do. But yeah, here's the website, our contact info if you have additional questions. And this is great feedback to provide, like, that you've given us for the engagement plan. I don't know why we don't do many printed provider letters, but I used to work at other agencies where, you know, if something big was coming, those were definitely in the works, but that is a great reminder. So yeah, I'm going to be taking all this back. And like I said, it's going to feed into our larger engagement plan, and the training site engagement strategy will be part of that. And some other comments on here were actually really great, around there should be a repository of childcare related events that is available. I believe we do have something like that already. So it's just making it more prominent. So that's a good reminder. But yeah, do you want to, I mean, does anybody have questions on, like, what I really focus on is that really the communications engagement side of this work. So let me know if you have questions around that or general questions. I know there's training specific questions around STARS hours. So yeah, but there was a couple questions before we open it up that we should address. You know, Karma, do you want to?
Yeah. I'd be happy to. I see a comment from Susan about why not fix what we already have, which is a really good question. I think one of the ways that I would answer that is first to just note that Merit is a homegrown tool that was created by DCYF and is managed by IT staff and others at DCYF. The LMS, the online training site, is a separate site that exists outside of Merit. And while currently it's been successful at creating a space for folks to take online trainings, the interface with Merit is not great. And there's a lot of time behind the scenes that staff and program staff and DCYF staff are taking to mark completions or to assist staff who've taken trainings and getting that content recorded in Merit. So I think the reality of Merit is that it has been an important tool, and the training site has been an important tool, but those platforms just aren't robust enough for the amount of online training and the functions that we really want and need in a tool. So by finding a vendor who is specialized in that, gives us the foundation from which to build a much more robust system that can interface with more of the data systems that we have currently in place. I'm looking to see if there are any other questions in the chat. Folks are welcome to drop them in or maybe come off mute and ask questions, things that might be on your mind.
So is this going to be more for the employees or for us as the provider to guide them to?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it will really be both. It will be a place for folks to search for trainings, to find trainings. It will be where will be able to see the progress in their trainings. And then for program administrators, center directors, folks that have staff that have required trainings, to be able to easily monitor and see progress that folks are making. And see the trainings that their staff have. So it will be a combination.
Will it connect to Merit, or this is still just going to be a completely separate platform?
It will connect to Merit.
Okay.
Connect as in your completed trainings will be logged into Merit, or you have to log them in yourself, or there's just going to be a link from one to the other?
Well, I think initially, so currently folks will search for their trainings in Merit. They may take their training elsewhere, and then that training has to get routed to Merit to register those completions. This new training site will encompass both of those things. People will be searching for their training in the same site. Their trainings will be recorded in that site. So all in one place.
So will merit go away?
Right now, we'll be keeping merit because merit has many other functions that we need to maintain. But in terms of this phase around training, we'll be building out the main training site to contain all of those training components so that the user is just really going through this one site. So any interaction with merit's really happening on the back end and really not experienced by the user.
Is there going to be any portion of this website that is required for us to use? Or is it just a resource?
Well, that's a good question. I might need to bring that question forward for others to help me make sure I answer correctly. I mean, I think certainly there are required trainings, and the required trainings will be searched for and possibly taken through this training site. But other requirements, I'll need to check on that.
Will there be opportunities for along the way for providers to give their input on like interface, user-friendly, navigating through that platform? And just because we are the ones using it every day, all day, I noticed that there's definitely some areas that could be improved, and it sounds like that might be happening with this new platform, but would love an opportunity to give you some feedback as you guys work through that.
Yeah, I'll defer to Marlene on this because I think she can really speak to it.
Yeah, yes, actually, we are going to be doing that. We're going to be like doing user testing down with providers and have them navigate the training site and see, you know, where they're getting hung up or whatever feedback they want to provide us to implement these things back to the developer. I'm keeping a list of, because like I said, we've sent one communication out broadly to the all providers list that our Office of Communication manages. And there was a little blurb just like in on our DCYF training site webpage about user-centered testing and feedback sessions. My contact info is on there. So I did receive a lot of emails from providers stating they were interested in getting involved. So I have a running list of folks who have stated interest. So if you're interested, please email me and I will definitely add you to that. Here's my email. Oh, well, it's right there in front of you, but just so you can copy and paste it. But like I said, all of these things will also be added to the webpage and will be announced via the PD newsletter. And we usually work with our communications office to send out more broadly.
I messaged in the Zoom, I messaged Angela separately, but because I saw she was on here, maybe she's just not really, she might be on another Zoom as well, but I just wondered, oh, she just answered. I was wondering about adding the substitute role in merit. Not yet. Okay. That was related to the retention grant. Sorry. It was important that there be substitute role.
Well, I think that we're at time and just want to thank you all for all of the feedback or the input that you've given us today. And please know that this is not the only opportunity to do so. So we look forward to being able to close the feedback loop with you and share a summary of the feedback that you've given us today and what our next steps are around the engagement plan. So thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, ladies. Have a great day.
Yes, you too.
All right, does that end the meeting? Erin, Julie?
That would be it. Our next meeting is February 8th. Put it on your calendar. And oh, we've got a word cloud. Share one or more words describing how you're feeling walking away from today. So it looks like there's a Menti up.